Have you ever looked at the clock and felt like time just skipped? One moment it's 2 p.m. and the next it's 3:30, with no memory of what happened in between. You weren't asleep. You weren't distracted. It's like reality glitched. Tonight, we're diving into 8 chilling stories of people who experienced unexplained jumps in time, where the world around them didn't seem to follow the rules of logic, space, or reality. These aren't just tales of forgetfulness or bad memory. These are encounters with something we can't explain. Maybe it's a tear in the simulation. Maybe it's a message. Or maybe it's a warning. Let's begin. Story 1. The Vanishing Hour at the Gas Station. Tyler was 28 years old, and delivery driving wasn't just his job, it was his rhythm. Every night, he followed the same route through the outskirts of Portland, Oregon. Small towns, country roads. He knew every pothole, every turn. It was routine, predictable, until the night it wasn't. It was a Thursday, quiet, no rain for once. The dashboard clock in his truck read 10:15 p.m. as he pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of a 24-hour gas station. It was an old place, rustic, almost eerie. One of those stations that probably hadn't changed much since the 1980s. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above the pumps. A flickering neon open sign glowed in the window. Tyler parked his truck, same spot as usual, and stepped out. He stretched his legs, rubbed his eyes, and glanced at his wristwatch. 10:17 p.m. He didn't feel tired, just needed a quick pick-me-up before finishing the last leg of his shift. Coffee, maybe a sandwich. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, a soft chime swallowed by the low hum of an old soda fridge. The clerk, an older man Tyler had seen before, looked up and gave a brief nod. Tyler nodded back. He walked the aisles slowly, grabbing a bottled coffee and a pre-wrapped turkey sandwich. Something felt off. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the air inside the store felt heavy, like static before a storm. The clock behind the register read 10:21 p.m. When Tyler approached the counter, the clerk was gone. He looked around, confused. The little door behind the counter was swinging slightly, like someone had just walked through it. Maybe he went to the bathroom. Tyler waited. 1 minute, 2. He tapped on the counter. Hello? No answer. By the 5th minute, he was annoyed. He called out again, louder this time. Nothing. Not a single sound except the faint hum of the fridge and the flickering buzz from the lights overhead. No customers. No clerk. Just stillness. With a sigh, he pulled out a $10 bill, left it on the counter, and turned to leave. The bell jingled again as he walked out. And then everything changed. The sky, which had been pitch black just moments ago, was now an odd bluish hue. The stars were gone. A soft glow lit the horizon. Morning light. Tyler stopped cold. His breath caught in his throat. The cool night air had warmed. Birds were chirping. His truck was gone. He spun around, scanning the lot. Empty. No sign of the large delivery vehicle he knew he had parked just 10 minutes ago. Panic rose in his chest. He looked left, then right, ran around the gas station, even checked the back alley. Nothing. It was as if the truck had never been there. Fumbling, he pulled out his phone. The screen lit up 5:23 a.m. He looked down at his wrist. Same time. His watch hadn't stopped. No glitches. Just skipped 6 hours. Gone. His heart was pounding now. He had no memory of the missing time. No dizziness. No blackouts. He hadn't fainted. He hadn't fallen asleep. It was just gone. In a daze, he walked back inside the gas station. The bell above the door didn't chime this time. The store looked wrong. There were no lights on. The fridge was silent, dusty, abandoned. Where he had placed the money on the counter, there was nothing. Just a layer of dust and a closed until further notice sign taped to the register. Tyler stumbled out of the building, dizzy, shaking. He called the police and reported the truck stolen. It was found a few hours later, parked neatly on the shoulder of a country road 8 miles away. Engine running, keys in the ignition, radio softly playing an old jazz station. No damage, no signs of forced entry, nothing missing. The dashcam, blank. The footage between 10:18 p.m. and 5:22 a.m. was nothing but static, like the camera had simply stopped existing during that time. Tyler quit the job a few weeks later. He still drives sometimes, but never at night, never alone. And he's never gone back to that gas station. In fact, when he tried to find it again, it wasn't there. Only an empty lot. Story 2. The time loop at the subway. Maria was a 22-year-old college student living in Brooklyn. She was smart, grounded, and not the type to scare easily. As someone born and raised in New York City, she knew the subway system like the back of her hand. It was late, 11:30 p.m., and she'd just left a study session at a friend's apartment near Union Square. She wasn't in a rush. She had taken this ride dozens of times before. Board the Q train, listen to music, zone out, get home in about 25 minutes. She boarded the train at 14th Street, sitting on the long bench near the door, earbuds in, hood up, head leaned slightly back against the glass. Her phone buzzed as she replied to a few texts, switched songs, and glanced up at the digital display. Next stop, Canal Street. She thought, good, I'm halfway there. But then, something strange happened. The train slowed, the brakes hissed, and the doors slid open with their usual hydraulic groan. A few people got off, 2 men in business casual, a woman holding groceries. Then came new passengers. A tall man in a bright red coat entered. He stood just to her left. An older woman wearing a headscarf and holding a worn canvas tote shuffled in and sat directly across from Maria. The train jolted forward again. Maria went back to her phone. Maybe a minute passed, and then, casually, she looked up again. Next stop, Canal Street. She blinked, confused. Didn't I just see that? She thought maybe the train was moving slowly or paused at the station. New York subways weren't exactly known for punctuality. But then, it happened again. The doors opened. The same people exited. The man in the red coat entered again. Same position. The same old woman took the same seat. Maria stared in disbelief. Was this déjà vu? She tried brushing it off. Maybe she'd zoned out, mixed up stops. But the pattern repeated. A third time. Then a fourth. Each loop played out like clockwork. Same doors. Same faces. Same movements. Like she was watching a scene on repeat. She began to feel a chill crawl down her spine. This time, when the doors opened, Maria quickly stood and moved to another car, leaving behind her seat, trying to break the pattern. She watched the red coat man enter again, this time from the next door down. Same place, same blank expression. When she turned to sit down in the new car, the old woman was already seated across from her again. Maria's heart was pounding now. She took out her earbuds. The silence of the train felt unnatural, not quiet, hollow, like the kind of silence that fills your ears underwater. She focused hard, trying to stay alert. She counted the seconds between stops, gripped her backpack tighter. But the moment she blinked. Next stop, Canal Street. She nearly screamed. This time, she didn't change cars. She stood the entire time, clutching the pole, refusing to look at the sign. She watched her phone. It was now 12:38 a.m. She had boarded the train at 11:30. This trip never took more than half an hour. She should have been home by midnight at the latest. But the train continued looping, cycling through Canal Street like a stuck record. Her phone's signal was gone. GPS wouldn't load. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The next time the train slowed down and the doors opened, it was King's Highway, her actual stop. No red coat. No old woman. The digital sign was blank for a second before updating. The train jolted forward again like normal. Maria got off in a daze. She stepped onto the platform, phone trembling in her hand. The time, 1:02 a.m. A 25-minute commute had somehow lasted over 90 minutes. She wasn't asleep. She wasn't dreaming. And the creepiest part, when she checked her phone's music playback history, the playlist had only advanced 3 songs, about 10 to 11 minutes worth. No matter how many times she tries to explain it, no one believes her. Not her friends, not even her roommate, who thought she'd simply lost track of time. But Maria knows what she saw, what she felt, and she refuses to take the Q train alone ever again. She says it felt like being trapped in a broken DVD, skipping, looping, stuck between seconds. A glitch in the system. Story 3. The Disappearing Road. Kieran was a 33-year-old school teacher from a small town in southern India. Reserved, logical, and deeply rooted in his routine. He wasn't the type to believe in ghosts or glitches, just a man who liked his structure and peace. It was a Saturday night in October when it happened. He had been at his friend Prakash's home, just outside the city, catching up over dinner and tea. Around 9 p.m., he decided to head home. He didn't like driving late, especially on those rural stretches where the highways are poorly lit, and stray animals often wander into the road. The sky was clear. The air was cool. His usual route home was simple. A straight 45-minute drive through a tree-lined stretch of National Highway 966. He'd taken it countless times. Familiar curves. Familiar mile markers. Nothing ever surprising. But that night, something felt off almost immediately. About 20 minutes into the drive, just as he passed the usual petrol station on the edge of town, his headlights flickered. Just a quick dimming, barely a second. Kieran frowned. Electrical issues? Battery maybe? He glanced at the dashboard. Everything seemed fine. But then his phone GPS reset itself. The screen went black, then rebooted. When it came back on, the map showed no location data. just a blinking in the middle of blank terrain. That's when the fog began. It wasn't like normal fog, soft, gradual. No, this came out of nowhere, like a white curtain dropped from the sky. 1 second the road was clear. The next, he could barely see beyond the edge of his headlights. He slowed the car to a crawl, squinting through the windshield. He figured it was just a patch, maybe a field fire nearby or ground fog. He'd be out of it in minutes. But minutes passed, then more minutes, and something wasn't right. There were no signs on the road, no mile markers, no reflective boards. The trees on either side were now just dark silhouettes, seemingly warped by the mist, like shapes that didn't quite belong. There were no turn-offs, no intersections, no cars in either direction. The highway, once predictable, now felt like a never-ending tunnel carved through some forgotten realm. And then he noticed something truly disturbing. His fuel gauge wasn't moving. He had already been driving for what felt like over 45 minutes since entering the fog, yet the needle hadn't shifted at all. Not even slightly. It hovered exactly where it had been when he left Prakash's house. A sense of unease crept over him. Not fear, something deeper. A disconnection from reality, like time and space were bending around him. He considered pulling over, but the road's shoulder had disappeared. Everything beyond the white lines looked like nothing. Not darkness, not fields, just empty, colorless void. Then, without warning, it was over. The fog vanished like smoke sucked out of a room. Kieran blinked, and suddenly he was turning the corner onto his own street. His driveway appeared like a mirage. He parked slowly, gripping the steering wheel as if letting go might break whatever fragile reality had returned. The clock on the dashboard read 3:11 a.m. He sat in the car, stunned. He had left around 9 p.m. This drive should have taken under an hour. 6 hours were gone. He pulled out his phone. No missed calls, no texts, no alerts. Just a dead zone of silence. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe he'd pulled over and fallen asleep. Maybe he got turned around and drove in circles. But there were no signs he'd stopped. The engine hadn't cooled. The seat was warm. He wasn't groggy. He wasn't tired. He remembered everything, except for the hours that vanished. Still shaken, he checked his dashcam the next morning. The footage started normal. Highway, lights, trees. Then static. 6 hours of black screen. No sound, no movement. As if the car had been parked in a garage with the lens covered. At exactly 3:09 a.m., the camera flickered back on, showing his street, his driveway. The headlights cutting through the early morning stillness. No transition, no build-up. Just cut, like an edit in a film. He's never shared the footage publicly. Only a few close friends have seen it, and all of them said the same thing. It looks fake, like you edited it. But Kieran didn't. He couldn't. To this day, he avoids driving at night. Especially alone, especially on highways. Because for 6 hours, Kieran drove a road that shouldn't have existed. And whatever place it led him through, he hopes he never returns. Story 4. The birthday that never was. Claire wasn't the kind of person to make a big deal out of her birthday. No wild parties. No Instagram countdowns. She preferred something small, quiet, dinner with her family, maybe a call from her sister who lived out of state. That was enough. She turned 34 on June 2nd, and though she didn't expect much, she was genuinely looking forward to the day. She had even taken the afternoon off work, a little gift to herself. Her mom had promised to come over with cake. Her brother was bringing Indian takeout from her favorite spot. It was all planned. That morning, Claire woke up around 8 a.m., feeling refreshed. She made herself coffee, answered a few emails, and even smiled when her phone buzzed with a few early birthday messages. She responded to some of them, hearted the others. By 1:30 p.m., she felt a wave of sleepiness wash over her. Nothing unusual. She had barely slept the night before. So, she curled up on her couch with the curtains drawn, phone charging on the coffee table beside her. I'll just close my eyes for an hour, she thought. That's the last thing she remembers. When she opened her eyes, the world was completely dark. Claire blinked a few times. The living room was cloaked in shadows, the kind that only come long after sunset. She sat up slowly, her neck sore, and glanced at the digital clock on her TV cable box. 2:04 a.m. She groaned, thinking she'd slept through the evening, missed her family, missed the cake, missed her birthday. But then, something caught her attention. The date on the box read June 3rd. Her birthday had passed. Entirely. She stumbled toward her phone, half expecting dozens of missed calls, texts, voicemails, but instead found nothing. Just a few early messages from the morning, the ones she remembered. Everything else was blank. No follow-ups. No missed calls. It was as if no one had tried to reach her at all. Confused, she checked the kitchen. The counters were clean. No takeout bags. No plates in the sink. No half-eaten cake in the fridge. Everything was just as she had left it before her nap. She scrolled through her message history. Her mom's last message was a simple, "See you at 5," from the previous afternoon. Her brother had sent a happy B-Day, "Can't wait to eat," around noon. But neither of them had followed up. Nothing about her missing dinner. Nothing angry. Nothing concerned. That's when Claire's sense of unease began to set in. She called her mom, who answered groggily. The conversation went like this. "Mom, what happened yesterday?" "I just woke up." "Claire, are you okay? We were all so confused. You never opened the door. We rang the bell. We called. We figured maybe you were out or just needed space. I was here. I napped. And I just woke up now. Claire, we were outside your house for 2 hours. The lights were off. We knocked. We left food by the door." Claire froze. She hadn't heard anything. No knocking. No calls. She double-checked her call log. Her phone showed no missed calls from her mother, her brother, or anyone. The food they had supposedly left at her door, it was gone, not there. No empty containers. No plastic bags. Just the clean doormat and silence. Trying to make sense of it all, she pulled up footage from her doorbell camera. It records automatically when motion is detected. Every delivery, every squirrel, every time someone walks by, all logged. But on June 2nd, there was nothing. No family, no motion, no activity, just a solid 24 hours of stillness. Even the usual neighborhood traffic was missing. It was as if the day had been wiped clean. The next day, Claire visited her local phone store. The technician checked her call records and data logs. Everything looked normal, except for a strange 6-hour gap in her device history. No app usage, no notifications, no background activity, as if her phone had been in deep sleep mode, or turned off entirely. But Claire had left it charging, and she never turned it off. She began to question herself. Had she blacked out? Had she experienced a medical emergency? She saw a doctor, got blood tests, an MRI. Everything came back normal. There was no explanation. To this day, Claire insists she laid down on the couch on June 2nd at 1:30 p.m. and woke up on June 3rd at 2 a.m. with no in-between. No dreams, no sounds, no interruptions, just nothingness. She says it's as if the day was deleted, not missed, not forgotten, but erased. She's never had an experience like it since, but every year on her birthday, she feels a strange sense of dread, like something is watching, like the world is holding its breath. And even now, years later, she asks herself one question. Where was I during the day that never happened? Story 5. The Classroom Glitch. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in the fall of 2007 when 16-year-old Jordan found himself sitting in his usual seat, second row, third desk from the left, in Mr. Lambert's Algebra 2 class. The classroom smelled like dry erase markers and old paper. Sunlight filtered through the dusty windows, and the soft hum of fluorescent lights filled the room with that constant background buzz students barely noticed anymore. Jordan wasn't the best student, but he wasn't struggling either. Algebra wasn't his favorite subject, but that day, something about the morning felt normal, familiar. The teacher, Mr. Lambert, a tall man with graying hair and a permanently tired expression, was at the whiteboard, slowly writing out the steps to a quadratic equation. His voice was steady, explaining factorization, his hand moving rhythmically across the board in squeaky marker strokes. Jordan sat with his notebook open, pen in hand, half listening, half daydreaming. And then, in a blink, everything changed. The sound vanished. Not faded, not lowered, just gone, like someone had flipped a switch. No scribbling, no coughing, no shifting chairs. The classroom was dead silent. Jordan's pen hovered midair. He looked up, and what he saw froze him cold. Everyone was still. Not like they were concentrating, not like they were ignoring him. They were frozen. Eyes forward, hands mid-motion. One girl had her water bottle lifted but unmoving. The boy next to Jordan had a pencil hovering just above his desk, but not a flicker, not a twitch. Even Mr. Lambert stood still at the board, arm outstretched, halfway through an equation, suspended like a paused video frame. Jordan's heart thudded in his chest. He slowly turned his head left, then right, trying to catch the tiniest movement. A breath, a blink, nothing. He tried to speak. His voice didn't come. Or maybe it did, but it made no sound. It felt like time itself had stopped. Panicked, Jordan blinked hard. And in that blink, everything snapped back. Sound returned, abrupt and harsh. The fluorescent hum, the scratching of pens, the creak of a chair. But something was off. The equation on the board was now complete, the problem solved and underlined. Mr. Lambert was in a different posture, now walking back toward his desk, mid-sentence. Jordan's notebook, which he remembered only having a few scattered notes in, was now filled with 3 full pages of neatly written equations, steps, and boxed answers, all in his own handwriting. He flipped back through the pages in disbelief. He didn't remember writing a single word. He looked around. The girl with the water bottle had already taken a sip and capped it. The boy beside him was working on a worksheet that hadn't even been passed out yet when the freeze happened. Jordan raised his hand slowly, hesitantly. Mr. Lambert glanced over. "Yes, Jordan." Jordan lowered his hand. What was he even supposed to say? Nothing. Never mind. When the bell rang and class ended, he approached 2 classmates he trusted. "Hey, did anything weird happen in there just now?" he asked. They looked at him blankly. "Weird how?" one of them replied. "You know, like, everyone kind of froze." They laughed, thinking it was a joke. "You feeling okay, dude? You were writing like a machine, didn't even look up once." That stopped Jordan cold. He hadn't written anything. He'd been staring at a frozen room. And yet, his notebook proved otherwise. He later tried to recreate the handwriting. It was his. The same looping lowercase g, the same slanted 7s. But it felt like someone else had written it through him. He never experienced anything like it again. But to this day, he says, "I wasn't just daydreaming. I was outside of time. It was like the world hit pause, and I wasn't supposed to notice, but I did. And when it resumed, part of me had kept going without me." Some call it a blackout, others a hallucination. But Jordan insists on another explanation. "It felt like the simulation dropped a frame, and I was the only one who saw it." Story 6. The mall that closed too soon. It was a cool spring evening in 2019 when Alex, a 26-year-old graphic designer from Los Angeles, decided to unwind with his girlfriend after a long day. They agreed on something simple: a casual evening stroll through the Valencia Town Center Mall, one of the larger shopping centers just outside the city. They parked their car around 6:30 p.m., the sun just starting to dip beneath the skyline, painting the glass-paneled entrance in warm golden light. The mall was busy but not chaotic. Families with strollers, teenagers in food courts, music from stores spilling out into the walkways. The couple wandered hand in hand through several shops. They browsed clothes, laughed at overpriced gadgets in a novelty store, and eventually stopped by a small cafe in the corner of the second floor. The receipt from their order still sits in Alex's wallet. 6:41 p.m. After grabbing their drinks, they made their way into a bookstore nearby, a cozy, dimly lit place that stretched far in the back, with leather chairs and warm amber lamps. The kind of bookstore where time naturally blurs. They browsed separately for a bit. Alex remembers flipping through a photography book about abandoned buildings. His girlfriend was near the fiction section. The place was so quiet they didn't talk much, just soft music and the occasional shuffle of pages. Maybe 15-20 minutes passed. When they stepped back out into the mall, everything was wrong. The ambient music that usually played through the ceiling speakers was gone. Silent. The crowds had vanished. Every storefront was dark. Security grills were down. Food court closed. Even the escalators had stopped moving. At first, they thought it was a power outage. But the overhead lights were still on, albeit dimmer than usual, casting long, eerie shadows down the hallways. They started walking toward the main entrance. "Hello?" Alex called out, voice echoing far too clearly. No reply. They tried other exits. All were locked, solid, unresponsive. His girlfriend checked her phone, then turned to Alex, pale. "It's 10:48 p.m. They both stared at the screen in disbelief. They had entered the bookstore before 7 p.m. Somehow, over 4 hours had passed, but to them, it had felt like no more than 20 minutes. Alex laughed nervously at first, thinking it was a prank or they had zoned out longer than they realized. But the deeper they walked into the hollow mall, the more surreal it became. There were no employees, no closing announcements, no sound of janitors or guards. Just a wide, empty building, still lit, but dead. Eventually, they found an emergency exit stairwell that wasn't locked. It took them outside into a deserted alley beside the building. The parking lot was mostly empty. Their car was still there, parked exactly where they'd left it. When they got home, shaken and exhausted, Alex called the mall's customer service line the next morning just to ask if the mall had closed early or experienced a power issue. The answer: no. Standard hours. No closures. Nothing reported. Still not convinced, Alex went back in person that same week and asked to speak to a mall supervisor. The supervisor was polite, until Alex mentioned the bookstore and the missing hours. Then, the tone changed. Quietly, the supervisor said, "We did check the footage after you emailed. For that section of the mall, the time you said you were there, the security camera. It glitched." Alex leaned in. "Glitched how?" "It's like you weren't there. You didn't leave the bookstore, but you weren't inside it either." The entire recording just skips ahead. No motion. Just one long blank window. He showed Alex a screenshot. The footage jumps from 6:55 p.m. to 10:43 p.m., with no indication of editing, no cuts, just missing time. Alex still has the receipt from the coffee shop. The timestamp doesn't lie. Neither of them remembers falling asleep. There were no signs of altered consciousness. No feelings of lost time until they saw the clock. To this day, he avoids that mall. And sometimes, he wonders, where were we during those 4 hours? Not browsing books. Not walking the halls. Just nowhere. Story 7. The Skipped Commute. For Jamie, a 29-year-old nurse from Manchester, routine was everything. Working 12-hour shifts at a busy hospital left little room for spontaneity. Her days were structured, precise, right down to the exact train she caught every morning. The 7:17 a.m. commuter train from her local station to the city center. On a Thursday in late November, the kind of morning where fog clings to rooftops and breath curls visibly in the air, Jamie boarded her usual train wearing her navy scrubs, her work ID clipped to her jacket. She found a seat near the window, halfway down the carriage. Same spot she always chose, one of the quieter ones. She slid in her headphones and opened her latest book, a paperback thriller she was halfway through. She remembers the train pulling away, slowly picking up speed as it cut through neighborhoods and fog. The train was sparsely filled. A businessman tapping away on a laptop across the aisle. An older couple chatting quietly in the front, nothing out of place. Jamie turned a page, lost in her story. And then, someone tapped her shoulder. She jolted upright. Standing beside her was a middle-aged conductor, gently saying, "Miss, this is the final stop. You'll have to exit here." Her heart raced, not from fear, but confusion. She blinked, looked around. The train was empty. Everyone else was gone. The carriage was eerily silent. Outside the window, the platform was unfamiliar. Not her usual stop. Not even close. She scrambled for her phone, thinking maybe she'd dozed off. Maybe she missed a couple stops. Maybe she could still make it to work. But her phone screen shattered that idea immediately. 11:02 a.m. She stared at the time, throat dry. Her shift had started at 8 o'clock. She looked at the battery indicator, barely touched. No apps had been used since she boarded. No music playing, no audiobook. Just the screen. She left it on when she sat down. Over 3.5 hours were gone. Vanished. And the worst part? She didn't feel it. No grogginess. No memory of drifting off. No sense of time passing. Her neck didn't ache like it would after sleeping in a seat. Her book was still open on the same page. She hadn't moved. She hadn't blinked. The conductor, sensing her panic, offered to help. He radioed the central station and brought over the ticket inspector, a kind-faced man in a green vest. When Jamie explained her situation, he looked genuinely puzzled. He remembered seeing her twice. "I checked her ticket around 7:30, he said. She was sitting just like this, book in hand, head slightly tilted. Then I passed by again near 10:55, and she was still there, same posture. Honestly, I thought it was strange. I assumed she was just really into her book, but Jamie had no memory of his second pass. The last thing she remembered was page 148, and there she still was. The inspector escorted her to the station office. They checked the train's logs. No delays. No breakdowns. Everything ran perfectly on time. Security footage from the carriage showed her sitting motionless for hours. Not sleeping. Not shifting. Just still. Eyes open. Blank. She had never experienced anything like that before. Nor since. No blackouts. No medical conditions. No history of sleepwalking or dissociation. Her health was perfect. She even underwent scans and tests out of precaution. Nothing abnormal. And yet, time skipped. When she finally got to the hospital, hours late and shaken, her supervisor waved it off. Everyone's late sometimes. No big deal. But Jamie knew it wasn't normal. To her, it felt like time folded in. Like she fell into a scene between two moments and was gently sewn back into reality. To this day, she takes a different train, different seat, never sits by the window anymore. And every morning, as the train begins to move, she watches the clock like a hawk, waiting to see if it'll jump again. Story 8. The Frozen Family Dinner. It was the summer of 2014 when Laura, a 16-year-old from Albuquerque, experienced something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Her extended family had gathered for a reunion, the first in years, at her grandparents' ranch just outside Santa Fe. The house was warm with the scent of roasted green chile, baked cornbread, and laughter that spilled through the rooms like music. 9 relatives in total, uncles, aunts, cousins, crammed into the old adobe home, catching up and sharing stories like no time had passed. Dinner was lively. The table was full, tacos, beans, plates stacked high, drinks passed around. The air buzzed with chatter. Someone had music playing softly in the background, an old ranchera tune that Laura half remembered from her childhood. She remembers it clearly. Her aunt was retelling a dramatic story about her dog chasing a coyote, and her uncle was halfway through pouring a glass of wine when Laura realized she'd left her phone charging in the kitchen. She excused herself. "Back in 2 seconds," she said with a smile. She walked down the hallway, the walls lined with family photos, and into the kitchen. The room was quiet, cooler, slightly darker. She unplugged her phone, checked the screen. One notification. Nothing urgent. Maybe 2 minutes passed. But when she returned to the dining room, something was wrong. Very wrong. The room was silent. Not quieter, dead silent. Like sound itself had been sucked out. Laura stopped in the doorway. Everyone at the table was frozen. Her aunt was mid-laugh, mouth open, hand raised. Her uncle's arm was suspended mid-pour. The wine bottle tilted, but the liquid stuck in midair like it was being held by invisible glass. Her little cousin had food halfway to his mouth, completely still. No one blinked. No one moved. No one breathed. Laura's heart slammed in her chest. She thought it was a prank at first, some kind of elaborate joke. But the silence was too heavy, too complete. She stepped forward slowly, waving her hand in front of her brother's face. "Nothing." She touched her mother's arm. Still warm, but stiff, lifeless. Terrified, she ran into the living room, expecting to find someone moving, reacting, but it was the same. The TV screen was frozen, displaying a paused image of a movie. A man mid-step. The fire in the fireplace had stopped flickering. Even the ceiling fan had stopped spinning. The blades caught in place like they had been glued there. The clock on the wall read 8:04 p.m. Laura screamed. No reaction. No one came. She backed into a corner, trembling, whispering to herself, trying to rationalize it. Was she dreaming? Had she fainted? Had something poisoned her food? Then, as suddenly as it started, it ended. She blinked just once, and the world restarted. Laughter erupted in the dining room. Her uncle finished pouring the wine. Her cousin shoved food in his mouth. Her aunt continued her story mid-sentence like nothing had happened. Laura stumbled back into the room, eyes wide. What just happened? No one looked at her. She glanced at the wall clock again. 8:46 p.m. 42 minutes had passed. To her, it had been only seconds since she'd stepped into the kitchen. She tried to explain, tried to ask if anyone else had noticed anything, the silence, the stillness, the missing time. They looked at her with puzzled faces. "You okay, Laura? Did you fall asleep or something? You were just on your phone for a bit, weren't you?" No one remembered her screaming. No one remembered her being gone for more than a minute. No one saw anything strange. She didn't eat much the rest of the night. Her appetite was gone. Her sense of reality had cracked. Later that night, she checked her phone's battery. It had barely dropped. No notifications, no background activity. Just like time hadn't moved at all. Since then, Laura has never been able to explain what happened. Therapists say it was a stress-induced episode. Her parents think she exaggerated. But she knows what she saw, what she felt. The world didn't just freeze. It paused. And she was the only one who noticed. Story 9. The Changing Newspaper. Bill Thompson was a man of structure, a retired librarian, 68 years old, living in a quiet town in Pennsylvania. His days were slow, peaceful, and meticulously ordered. Every morning at exactly 7 a.m., he would wake up, brew a pot of black coffee, and step onto his front porch to read the newspaper, the same local paper he'd subscribed to for over 3 decades. The kind you can't get digitally, printed on rough paper with that distinct ink smell. He called it his quiet hour. His wife, Margaret, would join him later around 7:30, by which time he'd usually be halfway through the crossword or reading aloud some silly article. But on a cold April morning in 2015, something in Bill's routine shattered. That day, he stepped onto the porch as always, coffee steaming in his hand, the Daily Herald tucked under his arm. He sat down, unfolded the paper, and was immediately gripped by a bold headline across the top of the front page. Councilman David Keene dies in fiery crash on Route 6. The story below was grim and detailed. A single vehicle collision. Car engulfed in flames. Investigators unsure whether it was mechanical failure or foul play. Bill was stunned. He knew David Keene. They had worked together on the local historical society years ago. He'd even spoken to him a few weeks prior at a grocery store. He read the article twice, not just once. The language was sharp, too vivid to be a misprint. There were quotes from witnesses, a statement from the mayor, even a black and white photo of the wreckage taken at night. Bill stared at the page in disbelief, fingers slightly trembling, not out of fear, but sorrow. Then, around 7:35 a.m., Margaret stepped out. "Morning, Bill. What's in the news?" Still stunned, he folded the page back and turned it toward her. "Look at this. David Keene, killed in a car crash." She leaned in, squinting. Then she frowned. "What are you talking about? That's not on here." Bill blinked, looked at the paper again, and froze. The front page was different. Same date, same paper, same layout, but the headline now read, "Community Rallies to Save Historic Library." An upbeat local story, the kind of thing he expected on a quiet weekday. The story about David Keene? Gone. Confused, he flipped through the inner pages, then back to the front. Nothing. No obituary. No article. Not even a mention of the councilman. He stood up, went inside, and pulled out the previous day's paper, thinking maybe he had somehow mixed them up. But yesterday's paper had a completely different headline about a school board election. So, where had the accident article gone? Margaret gently teased him, said maybe he'd been dreaming with his eyes open. But Bill knew better. He hadn't imagined the photo, or the quotes, or the smell of fresh ink on the paper when he unfolded it. Determined to prove it, he kept that day's newspaper tucked away in a drawer inside his study. But that's when things got weirder. A week later, Bill took it out to show a friend. He unfolded it and found a third front page. Now, the headline was about a manufacturing plant's layoffs. The article about Keene was still missing. Since then, Bill has checked that newspaper every few months. And each time he opens it, the front page is different. Always ordinary news. Always matching the same April 2015 date, but never the story about Councilman Keene. Not once. He even tried taking photos of the front page after each reading, but the photo always shows the last version he saw, even if the physical paper in his hand has since changed again. Eventually, he visited the local newspaper office. He asked for a reprint of the April 12, 2015 edition, the day of the alleged article. The archivist pulled it up on their computer. The digital front page was not the one Bill remembered. No car crash. No death. Councilman David Keene, in fact, was still alive, still on the council. Bill walked out of the office that day more disturbed than ever. It's not just that the article vanished, he later wrote in a forum. It's that it's been erased. Like it was never meant to be there. Like it belonged to a different version of reality. He still has the newspaper, now sealed in a Ziploc bag and hidden at the back of his bookshelf. He says he no longer opens it. He's too afraid of what might appear next. Because if a newspaper, something real, physical, held in your hands, can change right in front of you, what else in your life isn't fixed? Story 10. The music that played too long. Elena Morales had always found beauty in routine. She was a 31-year-old florist in a small coastal town in northern Spain, running a quaint flower shop passed down from her grandmother. Her days began early. Every morning, like clockwork, she would arrive just before 7:30 a.m., unlock the shutters, roll them up with a satisfying clatter, and breathe in the scent of damp petals and fresh soil. But the first thing she always did, before anything else, was put on music. Her playlist, titled Morning Bloom, was a collection of gentle acoustic songs and soft jazz, curated over years. It was exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes long. She knew this because she'd heard it every morning for nearly 4 years. It served as her personal sunrise. When the playlist ended, it was time to officially open the shop, flip the sign on the door, and welcome customers. On the morning of April 8, 2021, everything started as usual. She walked in at 7:43 a.m., turned on the lights, fed the shop cat, and checked the fridge temperatures. At 7:45 a.m., she pressed play. She remembers it vividly. The first song was Here Comes the Sun by Nina Simone, a cover she loved. As it started playing, she glanced up at the wall clock. 7:45. Right on time. With a smile, she hummed along, began watering the succulents, prepping bouquets, and opening the front windows to let in the crisp spring air. The breeze mixed with the scent of roses and eucalyptus. The sunlight stretched across the floor. It felt like a perfect morning. She trimmed stems, sorted lilies, wrapped arrangements in brown paper. Occasionally, she'd stop to dance a little between tasks. It all felt calm, productive, peaceful. Then, a knock on the glass. She looked up to see her coworker, Lucia, standing outside with a puzzled expression. Elena raised an eyebrow. She gestured toward the closed sign and mouthed, "We're not open yet." Lucia motioned back. "It's past noon." Elena laughed, confused, and pointed to the wall clock. But when she turned to look, the hands read 12:06 p.m. She froze. That couldn't be right. Her eyes flicked to her phone, which was lying by the speaker. The screen confirmed it, 12:06 p.m. She staggered back, confused. Her heart pounded in her ears. But here's where it got stranger. The playlist had just ended. The final song, a soft instrumental piano piece, had just faded out. The music had played perfectly from start to finish. No repeats. No pauses. Elena had felt the full playlist. She remembered singing to the 5th song, dancing during the 10th, crying briefly at the 12th, a sentimental tune her grandmother loved. She'd done all her usual morning tasks at her normal pace. To her, maybe an hour had passed, not 4. Lucia entered the shop, looking concerned. "Elena, are you okay? I've been texting. You didn't answer. The shutters were down. We thought something happened." Elena looked at her phone. No missed calls. No unread texts. No signs of incoming notifications. It was like no one had tried to contact her, even though Lucia insisted she had. Later, Elena checked the Spotify history. The app showed the playlist played once, in full. Start: 7:45 a.m. End: 12:06 p.m. As if the playlist itself had been stretched, but without any skips or speed changes. The battery usage: minimal. No background processes. No glitches in playback. Everything appeared normal. But it wasn't. She hadn't fallen asleep. She wasn't tired. She felt present for the entire morning. And yet, more than 4 hours had slipped past her, unnoticed, unbroken. No distortion. No disorientation. Just a peaceful, productive hour that, in reality, was a temporal void. Elena doesn't talk about it much anymore. She's afraid people will say it was burnout or dissociation. But she knows what happened. Since then, she sets alarms at 30-minute intervals. Not because she forgets time, but because time forgets her. And every time she presses play on that playlist, she holds her breath just a little, wondering if this will be the day the music plays too long again.